once again, colleagues. My name is McGregor, and I co-authored this paper with my colleague Riley Carpenter. So the title of our paper is The Potential Threats for the Auditing Profession, Audit Firms, and Audit Process Inherent in Using Emerging Technology. Here we go. Okay. So I'll briefly discuss what I'll be covering in this presentation today. I'll first start with the research question, then moving on to the rationale for the study, and then discussing the methodology that we used for this paper. We'll look at the rationale for audit firms as to why they would implement emerging technology. And then I'll spend a bit of time discussing the key threats that we've identified as part of our research. I'll then provide some concluding remarks and then end the presentation with the limitations and areas for future research. So we had one research question, but I thought I'd break it up into the three parts. So the research question is as follows. How have the threats from emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence, which includes data analytics, robotics process automation, and blockchain affected the auditing profession, audit firms, and or audit process? So I'll just recap on some of the definitions that I mentioned in the first presentation, and then also touch on what is meant by blockchain. So when we're dealing with artificial intelligence or AI, AI enables machines to think like humans and perform functions that require human intelligence, such as problem solving, recognition of text, speech and images, reasoning, and learning. It also allows computers to adapt to the environment. When considering data analytics, those refer to the techniques for analyzing the big data sets. And then lastly, when we dealing with robotics process automation, that allows rules-based human tasks to be automated by robots. And then lastly, blockchain is a tamper-proof digital database of transactions, or a digital ledger, so to speak, that requires consensus amongst computers on a peer-to-peer network before the transactions can be recorded in the database. So the rationale for our study is that we wanted to try and determine how technology could impact the future of the auditing profession. And we thought that this study would be useful because it would provide a starting point for firms to assess whether to invest in new technologies by providing a comprehensive overview of the key threats. And then, as I mentioned in the first presentation, Riley and I are both academics who teach students who are pursuing the Chartered Accountant South Africa designation. So again, it was useful for us to know where our students are heading and what they're going to encounter in practice, as that would help to inform our teaching and thus ensure that we are able to better prepare our students for the real world. Our methodology that we used was qualitative in nature, and it made use of a directed content analysis. And we used Google Scholar and the UCT databases as our primary sources of information. And then supplementary information was accessed from reputable websites of the Big Four, audit firms, and professional accounting bodies due to the newly developing stature of emerging technology. And then all the information that we gathered was evaluated in terms of the research question. So why should audit firms implement emerging technology? As I mentioned, auditors are constantly challenged to reduce the audit fees and improve audit quality, while having to manage a significant amount of work while also dealing with limited time and limited resources. So it's more of a business decision, and so firms will then consider using technology as a way to try to address some of those challenges that they face. And then clients may also drive auditors towards using emerging technology as they start to implement more of their tech in their business to aid their decision-making. The complex technologies that they use are going to create various risks. And so the auditors need to be in a position whereby they can address those risks. And so therefore they'll need to adopt the technology to assist them to be able to adequately address those risks. And then lastly, they'll also need to have the tech as a way to offer services in line with the expectations of their clients. So I'll spend some time discussing the key threats that we identified from our research. The first threat relates to the reliability, compatibility, and security of the data inputs. AI requires a significant amount of high quantity data to operate effectively. The output produced is thus only as good as the data input. A lack of data or data of inferior quality therefore affects AI's performance levels. The sheer volume, complexity, and variety of big data may pose a challenge over verifying its accuracy and completeness before using AI to analyze the data. Another concern associated with data input is that data may not be compatible with the applications as it lacks structure and has no standardized labels. If you think of something, for instance, revenue. So you could label it as a revenue, someone else could call it sales, for instance. So there may be compatibility issues if the application doesn't recognize that sales should fall into revenue, for instance. And so this may cause difficulty in collecting and merging data. Then when we're looking at issues regarding security, I mean, as you know, I mean, we live in the world where we've so much data floating around, and one of the primary concerns when you're dealing with data is that there's always issues regarding the security of that data, and so trying to protect that data from unauthorized access or use. And then lastly, the collection, transmission, and storage of personal data may also be limited or restricted due to certain laws and regulations. The second benefit relates to an over-reliance on technology and a shortage of skills and/or development. Auditors' lack of skills and competence appears to be a significant barrier to audit firms implementing big data analytics in their audit process. This is particularly exacerbated in developing countries and in smaller audit firms. The auditors' lack of analytical skills may be due to most accounting degrees and qualifying exams not emphasizing big data analytics. I mean, as I mentioned in the first session, I know this is something that we are particularly having to grapple with in South Africa. Furthermore, too much reliance may be placed on the application's ability without the true understanding of how that application arrived at those results. And particularly when auditors lack the necessary skills to understand how those applications work, there's potentially a huge concern that they may then not understand the results and therefore use that to arrive at inappropriate decisions. And so in order to supplement the skills that auditors lack, individuals with advanced analytical and programming skills may be needed. However, as other businesses adopt big data for their decision-making, audit firms may have to compete against those businesses and may find it difficult to source personnel with the required skill. Moving on to the next threat, concerning auditors that may become redundant or having to alter their roles. I'm sure you've probably heard that blockchain could be a disruptive technology that is set to have a widespread impact on various businesses in the future. Blockchain use will potentially cause a shift from placing faith in people to accurately record and maintain transactions in separate ledgers to trusting the nature of the system to automatically verify and secure transactions in a decentralized digital ledger. The shift in trust to blockchain has led many academics and practitioners believing that auditors will become obsolete. There is good news, however, as noted in the literature. There are some academics who believe that auditors won't become obsolete. However, they will be required to alter their roles if they still want to remain relevant. So when you're considering the auditor and the roles that they may need to adopt in a blockchain environment, auditors will still be needed to exercise professional judgment. A computer at the moment can't exercise professional judgment in the same manner as a human. Other roles that the auditor may need to service is that they could provide assurance over the system's ability to record those transactions securely and to maintain the integrity of that information. Furthermore, as external parties offer online services for blockchain, you may also need auditors to be able to vet those external parties to ensure that they offer services in accordance with all laws and regulations. So while emerging technology may not replace the auditor outright, they will be required to alter the role that they currently perform. There was another concern that was raised, however, which may cause auditors to become redundant, and that could be caused by non-traditional audit firms or private large multinational companies such as Google, who specialize in technological innovation. They could potentially enter the market because they could easily leverage their existing capabilities and apply that emerging technology within the audit process. And so therefore, by having greater access to expertise, particularly that's the area of expertise, that they may be able to offer a superior product to the traditional audit firms. Another threat that we identified related to the cost that may create a barrier for adoption.
Sorry, Dan, you've got 1 minute left.
Okay, sure. So emerging tech does require substantial investment upfront, and so smaller firms may not have the resources available to be able to make the necessary investments in the technology. And then lastly, regulators are often slow to update the technical standards, and so they may need to provide some additional guidance to allow auditors to be able to implement technology so that they can still meet the requirements in their jurisdiction. And then just concluding, so it's important for the auditor to remain relevant as benefits for the financial statements and the viability of the profession, but they'll need to address the threats that they're going to experience. So just to conclude, that there's limited empirical evidence on the effects of emerging technology. And again, we made no attempt to determine whether the threats outweigh the benefits. And then lastly, we could look at performance further quantitative research to determine the validity of the individual threats. Thank you. And I'll invite you to ask me any questions.